So our next speaker has flown all the way from Canada and also has one of the most fantastic moustaches that I've ever seen. Please give a very warm welcome to Stefan.
Thank you. Good morning. So, education. We're learning about technological change and lots of new things and lots of information, and you have to keep seeing what's going on. So I'm going to talk to you specifically about the digitalization of AEC continuing education. So that's the field we're here. And we are talking, unfortunately, my experience is mostly Canada and the USA, where we're leaders. We're looking at Europe, but it's more fragmented and a little bit more complicated. In North America, there are requirements for education in the AEC field. And it's often regulatory. Architects, 45 out of 50 US states and all Canadian provinces have a mandatory requirement for a certain amount of education in order to maintain their license. Engineers, interior designers, landscape architects, every year we're getting more and more professions adding them. We also get requirements for association. An example is the American Institute of Architects. Another example would be LEED. If you're a LEED professional, in order to maintain your certification, you have to do a certain amount of education every year in order to keep that certification up to date. And that makes sense because things keep changing. Because why are there requirements? Well, obviously there's technological change. We've talked about this a lot today, yesterday. BIM, depending on how you define it, has been around in some form or another, talked about since the 70s. But 20 years ago, when my partner and I started this company to do education online, there was no BIM. So it's a whole new concept that's come in, a whole new way of doing things. And it's as you heard, it is the future where you bring everything together. And because you have technological change and things keep changing, it's important to connect all these things together. You have to understand how to use it. You also get societal change. That's happening all the time. Now we worry about gender-neutral washrooms because we have societal change about trying to accept different choices in gender. Whether you think that's right or wrong is a debate you can have, but it's happening, and so we're designing around that. We used to design big open places for people to get together, and then some crazy person decided it was a good idea to drive a truck through that and kill a bunch of people. So now we have lots of barriers to prevent vehicles, and we design differently because of that, the whole concept of open space. So society changes what we do, and it's not just a matter of noticing the change, it's understanding it, because as a designer, you can't be an expert in all those areas all the time. Safety. We are now here, and it's nice to see everybody here, but a lot of people are concerned about this virus that's going around. So you're seeing dispensers around for antibacterial stuff being spread around. So that can affect things. We were walking earlier, Jeff and I, in an area that was built probably a couple hundred years ago, and you could see the railing was originally this high, and they had welded on an additional railing this high, because we know that you want, for safety now, we have standards where you have to have railings at a certain height so you don't fall over, which is a nice thing. And finally, you need education for credibility. And if governments don't see that professionals are ensuring that the design keeps up with the changes and is paying attention, then they're going to want to be involved, which is why you're often seeing professional organizations being the ones to bring the education, because they want to get ahead of it, because they feel, and I think it's fairly valid, that often governments don't do a very good job of creating those standards. It's better for those who understand the business to manage ensure that people keep up with it. So in North America anyway, most of the education in the AEC field comes from building product manufacturers. And there's an inherent conflict of interest there, obviously, because what manufacturers want to do is sell product. But it also makes sense because who else understands the technology behind these products better than the manufacturers? They spend all their time developing it. And if you're a leader, it makes total sense that you would become a leader in educating people, because you will benefit if you are a leader in the technology as well. And so that's where we come in to help develop courses that meet the requirements, because there are standards that have to be met, and you have to ensure that the education that is created is going to be credible. So courses generally don't talk about products. In most jurisdictions, that's against the rules. But again, if you're the leader in a technology and you are sponsoring the course, it makes sense that somebody's going to want to talk to you about it afterwards. So if it's well done, marketing is education. I mean, that's the whole definition. You want people to purchase products and services because you know that you're selling something that's superior or better priced or better suited for the purpose. Whatever it is, if your customer doesn't understand it, then they will never buy it. And so marketing is by definition education if it's done well. If it's done poorly, it's misinformation. But you must educate. There's different ways of doing it. And you have structured education and you have unstructured education, and marketing fits in there. So let's talk about technological change, because that's driving so much right now. You've probably all seen some version of this which shows how much faster. This is for 25% of the population in the US adapting to a new technology. So you can no longer learn a skill for your rest of your life. What you know today is not valid for tomorrow. And so when you are trained and you become an architect or an engineer, interior designer, well, you may not have learned about green roofs because they weren't very important at the time. Or LEED was not an issue when you were first graduated, but now everybody wants to have a LEED certified building. So the key is the need for education is going to keep coming, and it's going to keep growing. I'm going to have to learn faster and faster. It seems every year I'm learning to use a new app on my phone, or they change drastically how my app works, or my app becomes irrelevant. Do you think Facebook is important for social media? If you have young kids, they're using TikTok. You ever heard of TikTok? No. I've heard of it. I still don't know how to use it. I got to take a look at it at some point because I've seen people using it. So what's the motivation why people take education? Well, it would seem obvious, right, to keep up to things. But actually, the requirement is 65% of the reasons, according to a survey of our own users. It's a little cynical, but you know, we all get busy. We know we're supposed to keep up with things. We know we're supposed to learn and go and look at something, but we have a contract to finish. We have a project we have to work on. So the requirements are important. And if you are in a jurisdiction that does not have a requirement for education, I would suggest you encourage your jurisdiction to implement it. Because we all need a little push to do what needs to be done. Now, I fully admit this 65% again is based on people in North America who are using our stuff. Maybe in Europe, you guys are all much more motivated to learn on your own. That's very possible. But it still doesn't hurt to push and to ensure people have that education. So let's talk about the terminology in education. There are two types. We have live learning. Live learning is what we're doing right now. It's typically classroom. Synchronous is a better term for it. Often webinars are included in here. Now, webinars are included in here even though some people might say it's distance learning because the people are at a distance. But generally, it's been included, at least in North America, under live learning because it is interactive. It's a classroom. You're just a little further removed from the instructor, if you will. Distance learning is asynchronous. Traditionally, a long time ago, it was correspondent courses, or in the AEC field, often it was read for credit for a magazine. It still exists. And a lot of it has gone online. And that was the basis of the business when Jeff and I started this 20 years ago. And you also have unstructured education, which is very important. It's what you do when you're talking in the hallway afterwards with somebody and asking questions, or when you walk around and notice and learn things, or maybe you just read an article somewhere or have a chat with someone. So it's also very important. But this is very difficult to measure. And when it comes to ensuring that people keep up and know what they're doing and maintain certification, you can't count on unstructured education. You have to have a way of measuring it. And as it is, the distance learning has some weaknesses. At least online, there's ways of measuring a little bit more whether people are actually doing it by doing testing and ensuring they're actually paying some attention to it. You also, traditionally in the AEC field, I don't know if that's common here, but in North America, live learning included lunch and learn, where manufacturers would go into the designer's office to provide a course. So technology, as we go online and we invent all these ways of learning, fits into the traditional model. So this is the traditional model of the 3 core. So pedagogical knowledge is how to teach and how we learn. And that's based on the psychology and understanding of how much time you can spend listening to a lecture, how much time it takes to absorb information. Content knowledge, well, that comes from the product experts, or the experts in whatever the matter is we're teaching. So in our case, we're talking about generally building product manufacturers. And technological knowledge, that's, well, it used to be things like blackboards, and now it's become computers, and it's become ways of using technology to further the pedagogical knowledge that we have and leverage it and make it stronger. So the key part is to try to find a way to put all these things together in a center in the most effective way. So with that, you know, people have played with all kinds of distance learning formats. We already talked about text. You can easily add audio, which is text, and somebody like my voice would be talking, and you wouldn't see me, you would just see the text that's on the screen. You can add video, which is very, very useful in terms of doing demonstrations where you want to show how something fits together or works. You have interactive. This is the ultimate from a pedagogical standpoint. When people are involved in the learning, they learn better. So interactive is very important. You can do a lot more of that online. And we've even played with something we call drip education, and that's where you give little bits. You know, the younger generation has problems with attention span. And we tried, and it wasn't very popular, but we tried a Twitter-based course where you would feed on a daily basis bits of a course. You can do that through email. You could do that through social media. You know, we've played with podcasts, we've played with HTML5, all kinds of things. And what's the most popular format, no matter what we try? PDFs, 73%. And that's because we say that not because we have more PDFs, because we do have more PDFs, but when we put them together and we put different formats together and we let people choose, 73% of the time right now, they're picking PDFs. Why? Because it's faster to read information than to listen to me speaking. By the time I finished that sentence, you'd probably read that. You could have read it 2 or 3 times. And it's true. This disadvantage of videos is that you have to go through the whole video from beginning to end. You can't skip the part you already know. You can't skim parts you sort of know. You can't go back and forth. And people, unfortunately, as professionals, are in a hurry. We're all stressed. We don't have enough time. And so taking courses quickly is important to people. And it's different from the very structured university education where we control all aspects of the educational process. As people who deliver education to the professionals, we can't force them to take the better education, which is frustrating sometimes. Creating the interactive courses are not as popular because they take more time. They could be more fun, but still that's the challenge. Don't underestimate live learning. It's still popular. We are human beings. Remember, we're supposed to fit the technology to the people, not the people to the technology. You all came here. You could have watched it live, but you came here. Because sometimes there's advantages. For some people, it's just a preferred way of learning. They enjoy it better, they do better when they're live. For others, being forced to be somewhere, if you try to leave right now, it's going to be a little awkward because I'm going to see you, and so you'll stay here anyway. There are less distractions. I don't know if you ever tried to do a webinar in your office, and then as you're doing a webinar, your phone bings, so you look at it and you stop paying attention because nobody sees you looking at your phone, or somebody walks into your office to ask you a question, but the webinar keeps going. That's why personally I think webinar is the worst of all forms of education. People disagree with me on that, but I think it is an online course, but that you can't pause and you have to take at a specific date and time. Well, why don't you come to a place then where you have no distraction. But if you want to do something online, something which you can pause and take when you have the time, seems like a much better use of technology if that's what you're going to use. People like live learning because they like a change of pace. Sorry, it's cynical, but it's true. Lower effort. The reality is when a course is being given, people can sit and work on their phone and not pay any attention, and they'll get credit just for showing up. And in fact, we've learned that in some professional designers' offices, I won't even name a profession, the people get their name, who are senior in a company, get their name put on the list of attendees and they never even walk in. And the other popular reason for live learning is you get a free lunch in a lot of cases. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is just to say that people have different ways. This is the called learning styles, and people have different ways of learning. And what's important is to not try to teach everybody the same way. We are not all the same people. We are not the same brains. We don't have the same way of doing it. You came here because you enjoy being live or it works for you. Some people will enjoy playing the videos back later. Some people will want to read. You have to have all the different ways because people are different and you have to make sure everybody has different ways of learning. And one last quick slide on technology. There is a technological model called SCORM, Shareable Content Object Reference Model, in case you're interested. Just like there's BIM for transferring information, SCORM was a 1997 project, the US Department, and the idea is you distribute learning content for use by a learning management system. And you can also share data between LMSs in terms of scores and things like that. There's versions 1.1, 1.2. We're currently mostly using 1.3 from 2004 because it's fine. There are other words you might hear, XAPI, Experience API, Tin Can, that are coming. But because SCORM 1.3 is working really well, that's what people generally use. Although not as much as you might think, because people tend to have their own LMSs. They're not looking to share education. It's not like the military, who invented SCORM, where they want different departments to be able to teach the same content in a consistent way. So education is the passport to the future. So tomorrow belongs for those who prepare for it today. And intellectual growth should commence at birth and cease only at death. It's an ongoing process, and we all have a part, not just in learning ourselves, but making sure that others learn what we do and keep evolving as the pace of change gets faster and faster. Thank you.